How do you feel about rules? It seems to me that a lot of times we human beings have kind of a love-hate relationship with rules. On the one hand, we never like it when somebody thinks they have the right to tell us what to do we? We don't like rules that keep us from doing the things we want to do. We don't like rules that seem like they're unfair to us. And so we really don't like it when we have to live by rules that are imposed on us by somebody else. We feel like, if there do have to be rules, if I do have to live by them, I should at least get some say in what the rules are. I should not have to live by somebody else's rules without having any input in what those rules are going to be. But then on the other hand, there are times when we like to have rules. If we were going to play a game, what's the first thing we'd want to know? What are the rules, right? What am I supposed to do? What can I not do? Rules are necessary if we're going to play a game, no matter what the game is. And that's really true of all of society. Rules are necessary. And we need to know what they are. And we need to know if there's going to be a penalty for breaking the rules. And we especially want to know that when somebody else hurts us from breaking the rules, there's going to be a penalty for that. We want that person punished somehow because it's not fair. We all need to know what the rules are, and we all need to play by the same rules. And now at this point, you may be wondering what all this has to do with our Bible reading for today. Because our Bible reading did not talk about rules. Our Bible reading was about the disciples asking Jesus why he always talked in parables and what Jesus said in response to that. But it seems to me that when the disciples asked Jesus that question, why do you always talk in parables? What they were asking him really was, why do you beat around the bush so much? Why don't you just come right out and say what you've got to say? Just give us the rules. Stop telling us all of these stories that nobody's sure what they're really supposed to mean anyway. Keep it simple, Jesus. Just tell us what we're supposed to do. Tell us how we're supposed to live. Tell us what the rules are. That way we can follow them and we'll be right there with you all the way. And I think there are times when you and I can relate to that. Because, there are a lot of times when we read the things that Jesus said, and we're really kind of left scratching our heads about it. Not just with the parables. There are a lot of times we'd like for Jesus to just come out and say what he has to say. Just tell us what to do. Give us the rules. That way we can follow them. We'll know what we're supposed to do, when we're supposed to do it. We'll know that we're doing what we're supposed to do. And of course, Jesus does not do that. Listen to what Jesus says is the reason why. Jesus quotes the prophet Isaiah, and he says this, "You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them." See, one of the things that happens when everything revolves around the rules is that we never get around to looking beyond what those rules say. We may hear the rules, but we don't try to understand the reasons behind the rules. We might see what the rules say, but we don't perceive what it is that the rules are supposed to accomplish. And that can lead to our hearts being calloused. Because we get so worried about knowing what the rules are, about doing exactly what the rules say, about following the rules strictly to the letter, that we don't even think anymore about why those rules exist, what they're for. We don't even think about how our strict application of the rules can sometimes end up hurting people rather than helping them. And some of you may already be thinking about a few weeks ago when we talked about Jesus breaking the Sabbath law by healing people on the Sabbath day. The rules said you were not supposed to do any work on the Sabbath, and healing somebody was considered work. So if Jesus had followed the letter of the rules, he would not have healed this person on the Sabbath day. But Jesus knew that healing him was the loving thing for him to do. Jesus knew the Sabbath law was never intended to keep people from helping other people or to keep people from showing love to other people. As he said, the Sabbath was made for people, not people for the Sabbath. So Jesus heard and saw the rules, but he also understood and perceived the reasons behind the rules. So he acted not out of a desire to blindly follow rules, but out of a desire to fulfill the purpose behind the rules. And that's why Jesus so often spoke in parables rather than just giving us rules. The parables that he gave, the Good Samaritan, the prodigal son, all these other parables, they were examples to us. They were examples of how we should live our lives in ways that help other people and that show love to other people. Jesus did not want us to live our lives in slavish obedience to a set of rules. He wanted us to live our lives out of love. Love for God and love for other people. And think about this. Once we have a set of rules, what's one of the first things that everybody tries to do? We try to figure out a way around them, right? We start looking for loopholes. We try to figure out a way we can use those rules to our advantage and often to the disadvantage of somebody else. And that happened in Jesus' time. They started out with the 10 Commandments. Simple. 10 easy rules everybody could remember. Then people started to look for ways around them. Pretty soon there had to be interpretations and definitions and judgments. And before long there were so many rules and so many exceptions to the rules, nobody could even remember them anymore, much less follow them. Happens in all kinds of walks of life. It happens with the government. We started out with the Constitution. Simple document. Pretty much fit on one page. Now there are so many laws and rules and regulations and interpretations, you would not be able to fit them all in this sanctuary. At least not if you put them on shelves and had enough room for people to walk around them. It is literally impossible to know all the law that there is in this country. There's just too much of it. And it's the same thing in the United Methodist Church. The governing document of the United Methodist Church is called the Book of Discipline. This is what it looked like in 1892. Very small book, small pages, just kind of thin, thin book, pretty simple, compact. This is the current Book of Discipline. Not bigger, bigger pages, thicker. Look at the difference between the two. All of these things that have happened. And that does not even include the Book of Resolutions. The Book of Resolutions is about twice or three times the size of this. In fact, remember what it was that prompted Jesus to tell the story about the Good Samaritan in the first place? There's this guy that comes up to Jesus, and he wants to know what he has to do to inherit eternal life. In other words, this guy wants to know, what are the rules? And Jesus says to him, you know the rules as well as I do. What do the rules say? The guy recites the rules. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says to him, see, you know the rules already. And then the guy asks the question, and who is my neighbor? That's what prompts Jesus to tell the story. Because the guy is looking for loopholes. He doesn't want everybody to be his neighbor. He's looking for loopholes. We're always looking for loopholes. The guy was hoping that Jesus would give him a set of rules, and that way he could figure out a way to get around them. Doing what he wanted to do, but still technically obeying all those rules. But Jesus did not give him a set of rules. Jesus, in telling the story of the Good Samaritan, Jesus gave him one rule. Jesus gave him the rule of love. Love God and love other people. Period. There are no loopholes in the rule of love. Jesus does not allow there to be loopholes. Jesus tells us to love even our enemies. Jesus tells us to love people who curse us. Jesus tells us to love people who persecute us. There are never any exceptions in Jesus' rule of love. There is never a time when Jesus says it's okay not to love someone. Every time someone asks Jesus a question about what they should do, how they should act, how they should live, Jesus' answer is always love. Does not mean it's always easy, but that's always the answer. And notice something else. Jesus' rule of love is personal. It's something that each one of us needs to do personally. Jesus never gives us an example where we can shift the responsibility to love onto somebody else. Jesus never gives us an example where we can pay somebody to show love in our place. Jesus never gives an example where we can encourage somebody else to show love for us. Jesus' law of love applies to each one of us personally, to each one of us directly. Each one of us needs to show love personally, ourselves, with no exception. Jesus did not want for us to be rule keepers. He certainly did not want for us to be loophole seekers. So, Jesus did not give us a set of rules. Jesus gave us examples for us to live up to. And of course, the best of all example was just Jesus himself and his life. Jesus gave us himself, and he gave us stories to show us how to live in the rule of love. So let's not be hearing, but not understanding. Let's not be seeing, but not perceiving. And let's certainly not let our hearts become calloused. Instead, let's follow Jesus' rule of love. Let's see with our eyes, and hear with our ears, and understand with our hearts. Let's go beyond trying to keep a list of rules and show love to God and show love to everyone else, all those other people that God created. And then we can truly call ourselves followers of Jesus Christ. Amen.